so happy you're here with me today. The block that we're going to make in this video is an Ohio star block, and this is a classic block, and we're going to start with a two-color block. We're going to have one color for the star points and the center, and then another color for the background. Now if you have one of my kits, then you have all of these pieces already cut out for you, but if you don't, if you'd like to follow along and cut your own pieces, then this is what you'll need. You need one 4.5-inch square for the center and four 4.5-inch squares of your background fabric for the corners. To make the hourglass squares that make up the star points, you'll need 4 squares, 2 5.5-inch squares of the star point color and 2 5.5-inch squares of the background color. So the first thing we're going to do to make those hourglass blocks is on the wrong side of the background fabric, we're going to draw a diagonal line from one corner to another. And you can use a pencil, a pen, a fabric marking pen if you have one, but this line is not going to show in your finished block, so you can use whatever is easiest for you and whatever you have handy. I like to use a pencil to keep it simple. This shows up really well on the white fabric. So all you have to do is use a ruler and line this up so that you can draw a line diagonally across the back of each of these squares. So all you have to do from one corner to the other on both of those squares. And then we're going to put these right sides together with the squares in your star point color. I'm going to match up the edges, and then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along both sides of that line that you just drew. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on this side and one on this side, both sides of this line. So then you're going to have 2 units that look like this. You can see here there's a seam on either side of that line. Now we're going to cut this along the same line that you drew, and this is why it doesn't really matter what you use to draw the line, because it's going to disappear right now. We're going to get rid of it by cutting along that line. So then you have 2 half square triangles. And we're going to press these open with the seam allowance going behind the darker of the 2 fabrics, your star point color in this case. And the easiest way to do that is to start with that fabric on the top. So we're going to press once to set the seam, and then we're going to press this open with the seam allowance behind the star point color. So we're going to do that for both of them. Press once to set that seam, and then open it up and press that seam allowance behind the darker of the 2 colors. Then we're going to take these 2 pieces and put them right sides together with opposite colors facing each other. We're going to put the blue facing the white and the white facing the blue on the opposite side. And we're going to smush these up together until those seams snuggle up together in the center, close and tight. Now on the back of one of these, we're going to draw a diagonal line just like you did the first time to make the half square triangles. We're going to draw a diagonal line across both of those, from one corner to another. Again, use a pencil or a pen or whatever is handy for you. And then just like before, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along both sides of this line. So then you're going to end up with a unit like this. You see those seams on either side of that line. And then just like before, we're going to cut along that line, make it go away. Line up that ruler. That, so that now you have 2 hourglass units. So we're going to press these to set that seam and then press them open. And in this case, it doesn't really matter which way that seam goes because it's not going to meet any others. And because of the colors, you've got half of it going behind the white and half of it going behind the blue. So there's no such thing as pressing to the dark side in this case because you have half of each. So set that seam, press this open. There. So now we have 2 hourglass blocks from each of those units, and you'll have 4 total to make this block. So now we need to square this up to a perfect 4.5 inch hourglass. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do that. First, we're going to start with a smaller cutting mat so that we can move it around a little bit. That'll make it a little bit easier to accomplish this. If you have a regular square ruler, place it on your block with the 45-degree angle line going down the center along this line where those 2 sides come together on each one. And slide it up as far as you can to the upper right corner without going off the fabric on the right side or on the top. And we're going to hold that tight and cut up the right side and then across the top. Get those out of the way. And we're going to carefully lift that. We're going to spin this around so that the corner that you just cut on the top right is now on the bottom left. Now's where it gets a little bit tricky. Need to adjust that just a little. Okay, now we're going to line this up again with the 45-degree angle line along the center line and 4.5 inch line along the left side and across the bottom. You need a 4.5 inch line on both places. And we're going to line that up with the left side of the block and the bottom of the block. You want a 4.5 inch line along the left side, 4.5 inch line across the bottom, and the 45-degree angle line up the center. You want to make sure that this lines up with your diagonal line across the center of your block. Now where it gets tricky is you want the corners, the 4.5 inch line on this end and the 4.5 inch line on the upper left corner. You want those to line up with a corner of your block. You want that to be dead center of where those 2 colors come together. You want the edge of your ruler to be right in the center where those 2 come together. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And all of those things have to line up. 4.5 inches across the bottom and in this corner, 4.5 inches across this side and in that corner, and the 45-degree angle line up the center. So cut up the right side and across the top there. So you can see in that corner, that one's just a tiny bit off, but it's okay. This one is just about perfect. This one is perfect. You can see that point goes all the way to the edge and between both of those colors. I'm going to show you one that is not right so you can see what I mean. I've marked this one with a pin so I'd be able to find it easier. This is an example of when the corner is not right in the middle of those 2 colors. So this is what we're trying to get. This is how it looks if it's off a little bit. So this is the goal right here. So just get it as close to this as you can. This one is just the tiniest bit off, and that's okay. This is close enough that we can probably hide it when we join the blocks together. But this is way off, and I left this one on purpose so I could show you what it looks like when they're way off. And this is going to show up in your final work if you leave it like this. So this is one I would start over. So you do that with all 4 of your hourglass blocks. Now that's one way to square it up. If you happen to have fussy cut rulers in the right size, that's another great way to square up these blocks. The fussy cut rulers come in a set of 3 from Quilt in a Day. There's a 3.5 inch, 4.5 inch, and 6.5 inch fussy cut ruler. And if you happen to be making a block that is one of those sizes, these are great for squaring up, and I'll show you why. With this X in the middle, that's meant to, let's see how you can best see that. There we go. It has an X in the middle, 45-degree angle line going in both directions, so that you can center a fussy cut when you're using this ruler for its intended purpose. But that comes in handy when you have an X in the middle of an hourglass block that you want to line up. So this way, instead of lining it up and cutting one side and across the top and then flipping it and doing the measurement of 4.5 inches and cutting again, this way you can line it up one time and get it just right. Get that X lined up with the X in the middle of your hourglass block, and you know that the ruler is 4.5 inches, so that's exactly the size that we need to cut. So you only have to line it up that one time, cut along the right and then across the top, holding that ruler in place. Got some stubborn corners on that one. And then very gently spin that cutting mat around. Nothing shifted, so I'm going to just hold this in place again, cut up the right side and across the top, and you have a perfect hourglass, and this time perfect corners. All you have to do is line up this X and make sure that that point goes directly to each corner. Make sure your X is in the middle, lined up with your X on your hourglass block, and you get a perfect hourglass. And now you have all the pieces you need to make this block. So we'll place our blue block in the center, and then our hourglass blocks around it, and then our 4 corner blocks that are already cut to 4.5 inches. And there's your block. Very fast and easy, classic block. So then you would sew those 3 into a row, these 3 into a row, and these 3 into a row. So you have this. Now if you press these seams toward the squares each time, then they're going to alternate, and then these seams will be going in opposite directions. So when you put these together, just join your rows into your final block, those seams are going to snuggle up perfectly, so you can have a smooth seam all the way across there when you join these rows in to make the final block. And that'll help you get perfect points on all 4 corners. And that's all you have to do. So that's the Ohio Star in 2 colors. Now there's a variation of that I'm going to show you next. By adding more colors, you can have this beautiful variation of the block. You follow the same steps as we did for the 2 color block, with just a couple of exceptions. In the 2 color block, you had 2 squares of your star point color and 2 squares of the background color. In this case, all we're going to do is swap out one of the background color squares for the color that you want to use for the frame around the center. So we're going to match up the new color with a star point color, right sides together, and a background color with a star point color, right sides together. And then just like you did before, we're going to draw a diagonal line. I like to do it on the one color that is the same in these 2 blocks. So I like to do that on the star point color, but you can do it however way works best for you, as long as there's a diagonal line on one of these 2 blocks. And then you'll sew a seam on both sides, 1/4 of an inch away, cut that in half, and you'll have half square triangles like this. One with the star point color and the background, and one with the star point color and the frame color. So then you put these 2 right sides together, making sure that the star point color faces opposite colors and not each other. You don't want to put a blue on blue like this. You want to have the blue on the opposite side. So you have a blue facing the background color and a blue facing the frame color. And then just like before, you're going to draw a diagonal line from one corner to another. Sew on both sides of that line, and then cut it in half. And you'll have hourglass blocks that look like this instead of the 2 color ones that we did before. So then you place these just like you did the last time. So 3 blocks together to make the 3 rows. Press the seams toward the squares exactly like you did before. And then when you join these together, these seams are going to snuggle up so that you can have perfect points on all 4 corners. Very simple variation to this beautiful, bright, traditional block. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If there are other blocks that you'd like to see a video on, please leave a comment below and I'll be happy to work on that for you.